South African farmers are furious with the state's failures with regards to its handling of the foot and mouth disease outbreak and the vaccination program. I speak to Andrew Morphew, the spokesperson for FMD Response SA. Welcome, Andrew.
Chris, thanks very much for having me on.
Can you give us an update on what is happening on the ground, on farms now?
Chris, it's still dire. We are seeing the virus is continuing to spread. There's foot and mouth outbreaks being reported regularly. But the more concerning thing for us now is that we are finding vaccinated herds, particularly in dairy, because they were prioritized up front, are now being infected even post-vaccination. And that is an indication as to the failure of the rollout plan. And purely because we're not covering complete areas at the same time, and we're allowing unvaccinated animals to stay in areas around vaccinated populations. And vaccinating animals in isolation doesn't help. If a vaccine, like a flu vaccine, doesn't guarantee that you'll not get sick. It just helps, one, prevent it, and two, mitigate the symptoms of it once you have it. So the kind of serious implications of this is we're spending huge amounts of money as a country vaccinating animals, and we are finding that even those vaccinated animals are now getting sick because the rollout is just not happening fast enough and at a speed and scale that can prevent the spread of the disease.
So what is the only way now to stop the outbreak?
So the only way now is to take cognizance of the countries that have managed to achieve FMD free status, and our government has stated that that is their objective now, and we fully support that. And mass vaccination is really the only way. If you want to follow a vaccination to live program, then we need to follow a mass vaccination program. And countries in South America, like Brazil and Argentina, have left us very, very good examples of what needs to happen. And essentially, what they do is they vaccinate entire regions in very short windows. So we're saying the entire South African population needs to be vaccinated in 6 to 8 weeks. Now, in South America, most countries, if you look at the dossiers that they submitted to the World Organization for Animal Health, their vaccination windows are somewhere between 30 and 60 days. So that is the time frame that you're looking at. And what that does is it allows the herd to build population immunity. They all are vaccinated in a short space of time. They all are immune at the same time. And you essentially starve the virus. You give it nowhere to go. There are no pockets of susceptible animals for it to exploit. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. It's just continuing to circulate. So we need those strict campaigns, and we need to set dates. We can't just have a kind of willy-nilly program where we vaccinate in little bits perpetually. We need start dates and end dates for campaigns. We need to commit enough vaccine to those campaigns. And then, because the vaccine gives us an immunity of 6 months, those campaigns need to reoccur every 6 months. And that is essentially the South American system. And all the countries that have fought their way out of it have done it that way. And there are no countries in the world that have ever regained or gained FMD free status doing it the way we're trying to do it at the moment.
So what progress is being made with ensuring cooperation between the private sector and the government?
So we are seeing progress, and the Section 10 scheme that was published allows for more cooperation. But in our view, it deals with administrative aspects. It allows for vaccination activity. It doesn't allow for population immunity. And this is what we're saying. The countries in South America focused on the biology of the disease first. You look at how the disease operates, the timeframes that we need to work within in order to deal with the biological impact of that disease. And then you work back from there and you structure a system that'll work to control that disease. We're looking at it from an admin perspective, and we're expecting the disease to stick to our stipulated timelines. And it's not going to do that. We need to look at the biology of the disease and work back from there and structure a plan that actually addresses those fundamental issues.
Now, you've outlined the solution. How quickly could it be implemented if you had the cooperation of everybody involved?
It could be implemented very quickly. I mean, the government is saying that there's a lot of vaccine coming into the country now. By the end of the month, apparently 15 million doses will have been procured, and that is enough to vaccinate our national herd. So if we decided to focus on these tight campaigns, we could do it. But it does require massive private sector involvement. It is something which has been shown the world over that no straight state structure can be expected to have the ability to vaccinate at that kind of scale. You can't do it without private sector participation because it's a massive task, so it needs a massive amount of involvement. And that is really where we need to sit down and talk and plan. And I believe it is feasible, and we could do it quite quickly if there is vaccine in the country.
Who's on board from the side of the private sector?
I think everyone's on board. You've got all the producer organizations who have been doing an incredible job in trying to move this forward. I don't think that there is anyone in the private sector that is not on board with rolling up their sleeves, getting involved in making this happen. But we need it to happen all the way from procurement, distribution to application. The entire supply chain needs to be opened up so that we can move vaccines quickly and effectively into the areas that need them. And for commercial farmers as well, there are a lot of commercial farmers we've spoken to that are very happy to take care of the communal and small scale farmers around them, given the opportunity to do that. So there is a lot of resource that can be allocated to this. It is just really putting it together in a way that makes sense and that works for everyone.
Healthcare matters, but what matters most?
Having cover for the people who keep this business going.
Bonitas is there for you when it counts. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
Meanwhile, this sector of our agricultural industry has been devastated by the slow response to the outbreak and then the government's approach to the handling of the vaccination program. Can you give us an indication of the financial impact that this has had on farmers?
So for individual farmers, it's dire. For a dairy farm, where we've got the most numbers, we had the 2024 outbreak, and it's been significant in the dairy industry up until now. You're looking at roughly 6,000 rand a cow for a dairy herd that gets infected. And if you extrapolate that, the average herd has 1,000 cows. You're looking at 5 to 6 million rand an outbreak for a dairy farm. And for piggeries, we're just seeing the numbers coming through now, and it looks like it's 9,500 rand a sow. Piggeries are big businesses in the commercial context, so you're looking at anywhere around 10, 20, 30 million rand is the impact for a piggery operating in that space. And so it hurts significantly at a farm level, and these are not things that a farm can deal with over and over again. One outbreak is pretty crippling. Two outbreaks, it's almost business over for you at that point. And then you see the knock-on effects. So I, for example, on my farm haven't yet had it, but we're not doing any capital expenditure. We're trying to nest away as much of our resources we can, because if we get it, we know this bill is coming. So you don't buy new equipment, you don't expand your farming enterprise, you don't invest back into your business because you are worried about having to fund this disaster when it arrives. And as a result, you're seeing the greater agricultural industry suffering, everyone that just surrounds agriculture. And it's a big industry. You're looking at feed mills, tractor dealerships, equipment suppliers, down to your build-its in town and that kind of thing. All these entities are feeling this quite acutely. And that is why, as FMD Response SA, we are getting a lot of support from not just farmers, but people within the greater industry, because they understand that unless we get on top of this quickly, it is going to have a devastating effect on the agricultural economy.
I read somewhere that if a feedlot got infected, that it could, lead to financial damage to the tune of 120 million. Is that correct?
That is, I mean, I've seen that number as well, and absolutely that is correct. Feedlots you get in every scale as well, but for a big feedlot, it is, yeah, it's financially devastating, and those numbers are easily true. Yeah.
So, lastly, calling on government, what do you expect it to do right now?
We really expect government, one, to talk to us, cooperate with us. We are desperate to engage with the minister and try and understand why, from their perspective, they do not feel the plan that is being proposed by us, by industry. And there are a large number of the members of the ministerial task team that also feel the same way we do, that the target is population immunity. It is not numbers vaccinated over time. So I'd like to understand why, from their perspective, the plan is not feasible, so that we can try and work something out that is feasible, because this needs to happen. It's been proven to be effective in a number of countries across the world. And in our view, it is the only way that we get to the point where, one, we stop the transmission of the disease and the local damage, but two, we get to FMD free status and then regain the markets that we lost in 2019. So it is fundamental that the government and the private sector now start to talk and get around the table and figure out how we actually make this happen.
How do farmers feel about Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen's handling of the crisis?
Because I think that's a hard question. We're looking to work with the minister. We have a lot of respect for what he's done. He took the hardest decision, which initially was deciding to vaccinate the national herd. I mean, that was unprecedented at that point, and it was absolutely fundamental that that decision was made. So we respect that took leadership, and that he's made strides in resolving this. But we don't fully understand why there's now a barrier to taking the next step and doing what needs to be done to actually fundamentally fix the problem and put a system in place, or a plan in place, with dates and timelines and vaccine schedules that will stop the transmission and lead us towards FMD free status. So from our perspective, I think we are confused about why the approach is not following one which makes sense to us. And we really want to engage and understand what is going on, and how we can push it in the right direction.
Okay, that was Andrew Morphew, the spokesperson for FMD Response SA, speaking to BizNews. I'm Chris Steyn. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.